Welcome to Straight Talk with Eugene Chan. We have Mr. Chris Tang, the Secretary for Security, with us this evening to talk about if our city's safety is assured for the future. Mr. Tang joined the Hong Kong Police Force as an inspector in 1987 and was appointed as Commissioner of Police in 2019. He has received training at various mainland and overseas institutions in leadership and defense. Welcome, Chris.
Good evening, Eugene.
So you are the Secretary for Security, so I must tell you from many viewers' point, Hong Kong has always been known as one of the safest cities in the world. However, as you know, since 2013 with the Occupy Central, 2016 with the Mong Kok riot, not to mention in 2019, we have the riots. Hong Kong is seen not to be a very safe place until the national security legislation was enacted in 2020, then things are starting to get back to peace and order. So this evening, we're going to talk about if the safety is assured for Hong Kong's future, and you are the best person to tell us. And as you know, safety also, or security encompasses all levels, even including health, especially the last 3 years when we have the pandemic. And many people know that the Security Bureau has done a lot for the fight against the pandemic. Maybe you can share with the viewers some of the highlights or some of the good work you have done.
Yes, of course. The fight against the epidemic, of course, it's one of the top priority of our government. And in fact, of course, it's the Health Bureau to lead, but all other bureaus and other departments, we also contribute to the fight against epidemic. So for Security Bureau and the departments under our umbrella, so basically there's a number of things that we did. First of all, we do a lot of the, we call it RTD operation, which is commonly known as cordon and examinations. So we have to do the cordon and do the facilitate the examination for the residents of a particular building or a particular estate. And then we do contact tracing. We have a lot of detectives who are, we have a background in investigation to do the contact tracing to trace for the origin of the infected persons. And of course, we do the management of the community isolation facilities, including currently the Kai Tak and also the Penny's Bay. We talk about in this wave, we have about 9,000 people at the peak during that period of time. And of course, we also do a lot of enforcement, including the like the red code enforcement on a specific premises, and also enforcement on gathering restriction order, and also on the face mask order. So basically, we were quite heavily involved in a different aspect of work.
Right. So Chris, the CE, Mr. John Lee, has said people who have not complied with the Prevention and Control Disease Ordinance are actually hindering the epidemic effectiveness and the opening of Hong Kong. Do you agree?
I can't agree more on that. Like for example, since the enforcement of the red code, we have 42 people. We have to they violate the red code, and we have to escort them to the Penny's Bay or the Kai Tak. And out of them, we have prosecuted, we have summoned 7 of them. And as a matter of fact, during our enforcement action, we have arrested 3 people for using a false Leave Home Safe code, QR code. And also we have arrested 17 people they use a vaccine pass belongs to other people. And I would say this kind of violation is not just breaching the law, and they also affect the integrity of our whole effort in fighting against the COVID. And I would say they're very selfish, and they actually need to be condemned.
Right, Chris. I'm sure many viewers have read in the news that there were 7 medical doctors that was, kind of arrested because of they may be issuing false medical exemption certificate. What is your take on that? Are you surprised?
So actually, I'm quite surprised with that because, being a medical doctor, which is a quite reputable profession, and people do believe and rely on them. But when you look at those blatantly, violating the not just the law, but also their professional code, you're talking about issuing those exemption to those people that without any actually medical evidence, you just do it for money, I think, which is really let people down.
Right. As you know, now we have the 0+3 quarantine measure. Do you think this is going to affect our reopening of our boundary with the mainland? Do you think it's going to?
I don't think so. I think opening the boundary with mainland and opening the border with overseas, they're two different issues, and you can do it all together. You're not, doing with overseas and you affect mainland. I'm sure both the mainland and Hong Kong, we would like to see the opening of the boundary as soon as possible. But of course, we have to take into consideration of the epidemic situation.
Right, there's someone mentioned about the pre-departure quarantine arrangement. Is that one of the possibilities that we may have?
So actually, we are actively discussing with our counterpart. Of course, it's led by the Health Bureau. But if it becomes materialized, we will be responsible to manage the facilities. But of course, some details have yet to work out.
Right. As we know, you are running the community isolation facilities. There's also some talks of when the pandemic really quiets it down, they may change it to a transitional housing. Is that a good idea, do you think?
Of course, we have to utilize all the resources in the available to the government. Of course, it will be a government decision as to whether they should be remain on standby or it should be changed into other use that can benefit the society as a whole.
Right. The Penny's Bay is a term that can be quite scary at the earlier stage, and I realize some of the public perception of the running of the community isolation facility has improved drastically since you have taken over the running of the facilities. Can you share with the viewers what have you done to make such a big difference to the impact of the community? I
think basically the running of the operation of the CIF are all along very good. But upon it's in the beginning, there are people they try to do it in purpose to smear the facilities and try to create public fear. With a will to create a dissatisfaction on the government. So they do it on purpose. So basically what they did is through misinformation, some fake pictures. As you remember, in the beginning, there are pictures showing that, the ceiling are falling and there's no separation of toilet. And they talk about, how bad it is. But actually, these are all misinformation. So we played a lot of effort in doing with a transparency, and then we do some publicity. And like in the operation of the Kai Tak CIF, before it opened, we invite our friends from the media, actually to have a look on our facilities and have a look on how we're going to manage so it will dispel all this smearing effort. So I think openness is important.
Right, Secretary, maybe we move on to another area that has attracted the public attention. Is the control of the CBD products. Many people have been told that the age of consuming drugs in the Hong Kong community is getting lower and lower. Even some of the primary school children are trying to test on drugs. This is very worrying. Is that the reason why you are pushing on this regulation?
All right. So first of all, when we look at the figure of people reporting that they have drug abuse, or the people being arrested for drug-related offense. In the past 10 years, basically there's a continuous decrease. But at the same time, there's a continuous increase on the abuse of the cannabis. So cannabis is the substance that we need to take very seriously. And then you have to know what is CBD. So CBD is extract from cannabis. By itself, it is still not regulated for the time being. But chemically, there's a side product which is called THC, which is a psychoactive and which is considered as a kind of drug. So when you extract CBD, it will be very difficult to extract it without THC coexist with the CBD. And in fact, as a matter of fact, since 2019, we have 220 operations against CBD. And from the product that we found, 1/3 of them, which is over 4,000 pieces of this substance, contain THC. And so THC, it's a psychoactive, and they can attack your nerve, and you will be addicted to that. And so I think there's a need to control CBD.
Right, Secretary, the CBD products in other parts of the world may not be as regulated or people are using it freely. So how will that affect Hong Kong as an international financial center per se?
I mean, every country have their own culture. Even in some countries, they consider cannabis as legal. I mean, in terms of Hong Kong, we have zero tolerance about cannabis. And yet, although CBD itself is not psychoactive per se, but I mean, people will induce you saying that, come on, CBD is not drugs, no problem. And then CBD is derived from cannabis, so there's no problem with cannabis at all. So you take cannabis as well. So I think this is also another issue that we have to look into.
Right. What will be the penalty if you're found to be in possession of this? Is it going to be quite a strict penalty on this?
So basically, we're planning to put CBD as a kind of drug. So you possess CBD, and it will be equally as possessing of like cannabis. So it will be the same.
Right, Secretary, we have to take a break now, but stay with us, viewers. We will be right back. Welcome back. With us this evening is Mr. Chris Tang, Secretary for Security, and he has been talking to us about how the Security Bureau is actively guarding the safety of our city's health amidst the pandemic. So, Secretary, we have talked about the work on all the community isolation facilities, and you mentioned about the importance of the control of the CBD products. Let's move on to another area that many people are concerned, that so-called fake news, all this misinformation about Hong Kong. People still remember in 2019, there are a lot of all this misinformation about people getting killed, all these things that was not true being circulating and really incite a lot of people. So is that the reason why this term of government have put a lot of emphasis onto the social media?
Of course, first of all, you have to look at the nature of fake news or misinformation, right? So there's something that they know is not true, but they tell people as if it is true and with a purpose. I mean, when you look back, what is the effect of a fake news? And they create hatred against government. They create distrust against the government, and they divide the society, and they also provoke like a discontent. So these are all the purpose of the fake news. So bear that in mind, you know, what happened in 2019, as you have said, they talk about, you know, massive killing by the police during the August 31st, and they are like a massive sexual abuse in San Ngok Leong, and which they are all fake and it's proven to be fake. So I think we have to address this problem.
Right, you know, with the implementation of the national security legislation in 2020, much of the society has restored to order, as I mentioned earlier. And there's still news that we will be planning to enact the Article 23. Is there still such a need? Because everything is such a peaceful now and we have the national security legislation. Do we still need it?
Of course, you know, when you look at the society, it's rather peaceful for the time being. But there's no room for complacence, you know, because there are always elements, including external element or local terrorism, and they will like to see a chaotic situation in Hong Kong. So Article 23 is not just a constitutional responsibility, and there's a practical need. Because, you know, under Article 23, we have 7 types of offenses or circumstances that we need to take care of. And the national security law also, you know, taking care of 2 things, just like the secession and also the subversion. But it has the like treason, the sedition, and the theft of state secret, and also, you know, the to prohibit overseas political organization, and also the prohibition of the Hong Kong political organization, you know, establishing tie with overseas political organizations. They remain untouched. So we have to enact law to close the loop of these areas.
Right, so what is the biggest concern at the moment for national security? Because all of us can now enjoy safety on the street. We can we can actually do anything that without fear, like many other cities in the world that you can't walk in the middle of the night, say in London or New York, you get worried. So is there still anything you're worried?
Yeah, of course, as I said, there's no room for complacency. When you look at the geopolitical situation globally, there are always external forces that they would like to maintain their hegemony, and they're afraid, the development of mainland China will affect their hegemony. So they will use whatever means, including smearing, including incite people of Hong Kong to be against the mainland. So this always remains a threat.
Right. You mentioned also last week before the 1st of October celebration that we have to be very vigilant about these, especially all these special occasions. Did you have intelligence on that? Do you have any intelligence?
I mean, by nature, on some special days, people may make use of that opportunity to advocate, the independence of Hong Kong or the independence of Taiwan, which is seriously hampering the national security of Hong Kong and also of China.
Right. So just now you were explaining to us why we still need to enact the Article 23, and I'm sure people still remember in nearly 20 years ago in 2003, there was a lot of opposition on this law being enacted. Do you anticipate the same is going to happen? I mean, what are you going to do to making sure the society, the community, especially the younger generation, is fully comprehend of the rationale behind this?
Of course, we do expect there will be someone using the excuse to again create a hatred among the society or to divide the society, and they will say it's no good to have such a law. But when you look at what happened overseas, every country have national security related law. In the United States, they have over 20 legal provisions. And actually recently, the UK is also tried to enact a national security bill which is addressing a similar situation. So I think any effort to suppress Hong Kong and mainland China in protecting our security will fail.
Right. There's another term that often comes up recently is word soft resistance.
Yeah.
What can you do when it's soft?
I think we have to tell the truth to the peoples of Hong Kong and let them know that what is actually happened and why the some Western world, they try to smear our government and they try to smear our country. And actually we live in Hong Kong. We know that we enjoy all kinds of freedom. We know that there's no like a massive of human trafficking in Hong Kong. But in some of the reports, they describe Hong Kong as the worst place in the world. So this is an effort to try to smear Hong Kong and try to smear our country. So we have to counter that.
Right, Chris, as we mentioned repeatedly through all our shows and today, that youth is, that part of society is somewhere that we are very concerned about. And we know that it has been reported more than half of the protesters convicted for their roles in the 2019 anti-government demonstration have expressed deep remorse over their actions. Can you tell us a bit about more what we can help them to kind of rehabilitate them to back into society? All
right, so as you said, a lot of youth, they're being instigated or provoked to use violence or to commit offenses during the 2019 incidents. Mm-hmm. I mean, after they of course, they break the law, they have to serve the legal consequence. But we observe that about 60 to 70% of them feel deep remorse because they now understand that they're being provoked. And they know more about actually what happened. They know more about our country, and they now have a kind of a positive thinking. And actually, they really feel remorse and they would like to turn a new leaf. So in our institution, we try to help them to rehabilitate, apart from their psychological state, and we also try to help them in education and in vocational training and in their future development as well.
I heard that some of them were university students, but they have difficulty getting back into the course. I mean, can we help them?
So actually, we are working some education institution to help them to complete their degree course. And this is one of the major things that we need to do. And actually, we're also working with a lot of like the commercial sector, business sector. They are very helpful in offering like jobs opportunity or placement opportunity for those youth people. In particular, some of them would actually like to offer some placement or workplace in the Greater Bay Area so that they can know more about our country and to know more about the world.
Right. As we all discussed, we know that they really need a greater sense of national identity. Can the disciplinary forces do anything since they are right under your arms?
All right. So in fact, our disciplinary forces, we all run youth programs. And through the youth programs, apart from nurturing their leadership, but also their sense of identity of being a Chinese and to nurture their patriotism, we do it through like flag raising ceremony, like practicing Chinese foot drill, and to try to organize some of the visit to the Armenian.
Right. I mean, you're being the Secretary for Security. How will you advise the government to engage the different levels of community in being more serious about this national identity issue that we once had a problem with?
Of course, this is a whole government effort. I think we need to do it through education, including formal education, and now we have put national education back into the curriculums. And we also need to do it through culture change, like to advocate the national flag raising, and we do exhibitions and we do forums. And I think on some particular date, for example, on the 15th of April, which is the National Security Education Day, and to use whatever means to advocate the national security identity.
Right. So, Secretary, we know the policy addressed by the Chief Executive is going to be in a couple of weeks' time. Anything from the Bureau that you can preempt the viewers, that we can have a first-hand information tonight?
Now, of course, it's drafted by the Chief Executive. I don't have a crystal ball,
right,
and I leave it to him.
Right. All right. So thank you, Chris, for telling us all the initiatives the Security Bureau are taking to ensure Hong Kong remains to be a safe city, so that as we open up, people can have confidence to live and work here. Have a pleasant evening and good night.